Okay, cool. So we've got 14 minutes left until we hit our hard deadline. Do we want to try and talk about equipment in that time? We'll just start going, and if we need to pick it up another time, we can do that. Yeah. So do you want to lay that out, or do you want me to read out the bit that you put out in the email?
We basically were talking about how equipment has sort of evolved over the years in the fitness industry and the strength and conditioning world. But, prior to sort of 2010, you weren't like the common, well, Al, what is some of the common equipment that you would have seen in commercial gyms? Because there wasn't a whole lot of private gyms prior to 2010. There was a handful, but there wasn't a lot like there is now. Like, what's the sort of equipment that you would see in a commercial gym? And I'll get into this as well.
Well, I think a lot of the commercial gyms were focused on that kind of like bodybuilding style of training. So I remember the gym I was at in Christchurch had hammer strength machines everywhere, isolation machines. You could have a machine for anything.
Cable machines.
Yeah, yep. Everything was a machine. And then as far as strength training goes, the big ones were obviously your bench press racks, but leg press.
Fucking hate that machine.
Which one? The 45?
The 90?
Leg press.
Yeah.
The 45.
I love them.
Well, it's interesting because they initially developed that 90 as a rehab machine, and then it becomes all of a sudden people loading it up as a strength, as a genuine strength.
If you're a rugby player and you're getting into a scrum,
it had some application.
Yeah.
We had speed skaters at the course I was on, and they used to do single leg press with ridiculous amounts of weights, and it was...
That's the 45 degree,
Yeah, and they would do it slow, so they'd be like that, and then it would explode.
So like a slow eccentric, and then explosive.
I remember watching. I was like, "How are their knees not snapping?" But anyway,
So it was mostly like machines, and then
machines.
You had free weights, and it was just dumbbells and barbells.
Yeah. So you still had your dumbbells, barbells, bench presses, those sort of things, but you didn't see like a lot of what you see now.
No. You might get a yoga ball. Actually, they weren't around for a long time. They sort of came in.
You mean the Swiss ball?
Yes,
proverbial
Swiss ball.
Yeah.
Which would be the fucking Bosu balls. Would have been like early 2000s or something. You start to see some of that stuff come in.
It used to be so back in initially back in the turn of the century kind of things. It was all like calisthenics and like high school gymnasium type stuff, like those rings and bars and stuff that you'd hang off and the horses that you jump over and
like
plyometric type stuff,
rings,
that sort of stuff.
ropes.
And it's like fashion though. A lot of that's come back in, hasn't it? The climbing boards.
Yep.
What were they called again?
Peg boards.
The peg boards.
All that sort of stuff. Gymnastics rings, all that sort of stuff. And then it went to like aerobics in the 80s. I'm probably skipping out a whole generation here. You had like all the barbell stuff was really popular.
You got all the cardio equipment.
Then
Completely forgot about that.
Went full aerobics. Yeah. I'm talking about commercial gyms anyway.
Like bikes, treadmills, steppers.
And then you had aerobics classes with the steps. Everything was done with the step.
Oh, yeah. That's like the old Jane Fonda stuff.
Yeah. It was excellent. I wish she'd come back. And then it went like the bodybuilding way. So as Arnie picked up popularity and that world, and then so you had machines, and then obviously then it became very commercial because those machines are worth a fortune, and then you had like sales reps for the machine. Did you get those guys used to come out and they
absolutely
try and set your whole gym up and give you a little bit of a discount, all that?
I mean, you could get machines with 1,000 things in one. Not really, but
it's just more things.
10 things in one. But it was in the 90s, it was just really common. You'd see sort of in a gym, it was very masculine. A lot of men, spandex pants, no shirt, getting around. That wasn't uncommon at all. But we sort of, I think, progressed past that in the sort of early 2000s.
The equipment didn't change, but the people did.
Yeah, the people definitely changed. And in terms of in a commercial gym, like Al said, and not speaking specifically about aerobics training that was very, very popular in the 80s. But yeah, the kind of equipment that was in the gyms was really what Al said, majority was focused around hammer strength machines and cable pulley systems. And then sort of around 2005, 2006, here in Canberra, we started to see the introduction of things like sleds, reverse hyper machines, ropes, farmers walks, yokes, atlas stones. And
What was the catalyst
for these things coming in? I think people, I think the internet is a lot, and social media.
I would have thought.
No social media. It would have been internet.
Well, yeah, not then, but yeah, the internet and people being able to sort of
They
have.
start to educate themselves.
And CrossFit starting to.
CrossFit was a few years later, but
Yeah, well,
CrossFit made
it brought back the
explode.
no shirt, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you sort of get like Commando Steve on that Biggest Loser was what it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And you see like, that's some weird equipment I haven't seen before. Or like just flipping tyres or dragging a rope down a beach or something like that.
Because people have access to information. 2005, instead of going to the library to look up Louis Simmons' butt, which you're not going to do, but people would then see someone like Commando Steve. He's fit, jacked. He's ticking all those boxes that what people actually want, and then they see what he's doing, and then he's flipping tires. He's not on a machine. He's flipping tires, and he's doing rope slams and burpees, and so then they start to put two and two together. So
I must have to do those exercises if I want to look like that.
And then it all explodes when you have CrossFit take centre stage for a while there, and you had all these people doing crazy things with different bits.
And the commercial gyms followed suit. Yeah. And now it's uncommon sort of not to see a sled track, a yoke, farmers walks, kettlebells, ropes in any commercial gym now.
It's almost
It's a stock standard like cables, and
they were very slow.
Yeah.
But then some of the big
CrossFit
ones
boxes were popping up
everywhere. Yeah.
And every now and again, I'd be traveling somewhere and I'd go into a commercial gym and I'd have to do kettlebell swings with a dumbbell. And this is, 2010s. And then it just turned within a matter of years.
yeah.
Well, they had to, because then, so Fitness First seemed to have struggled, and like a few of them, the bigger ones, haven't been able to adapt.
Yeah? What do you mean?
Well, they relied on huge volumes of people. They had huge floor spaces in places like, I know in Perth, they had Hay Street. They had this huge, like right in the middle of the city.
There was a huge one in Canberra in Civic.
Yeah.
So massive floor space covered in machines.
Their rent would be astronomical. Like they need thousands of people, and then if the people are starting to trickle away, they're bleeding by 1,000 cuts as people go off to CrossFit boxes or to private studios or to to whatever other training option they're going to. Yoga, Pilates is another one that's had a huge boom.
Yeah, Pilates sort of started to come around in the 90s and like late night
especially in
advertisements and stuff.
In the urban environments, like you go in a city, Melbourne, in a city, Sydney, Brisbane, there's yoga studios everywhere. Pilates studios, that's huge.
Do you think the big sort of globo gyms like Fitness First, their failure to respond quickly enough to the change in demand actually led to the proliferation of private gyms at a higher level, because they had the equipment, they had the special knowledge.
There's low barrier to entry for that small private gym, so you can go and rent 100 square meters. You can spend a few grand and get started.
I think that the private setup was always going to happen.
Yeah.
Whether or not the big gyms suffered or not.
So what do you think kicked it off? I mean,
it's hard to put my finger on what kicked it off, but what I think, in terms of, the rest of the industry does have a lot to thank CrossFit for. Bringing this stuff to the mainstream and people looking at it and going, I've been training over in this, but I like that. I'm going to set up my own thing.
Yeah, I wonder whether
and then spin-offs off that.
Whether you can call it like the rise of the garage gym, because that was a big part. Like if you went on to the CrossFit Journal, which for anyone who's not familiar with it is not a peer-reviewed journal. It's just there blog, magazine, online thing. And you go to the CrossFit website and there'd be like pictures of people's home gyms, and community became a part of going to the gym, sort of, again, tied to CrossFit. But I sort of wonder whether by showing people how much variation you could get with a relatively simple collection of equipment, people are like, the barrier to entry for opening up my own gym might actually be a lot lower than I thought it was.
Yeah, and I think, this is delving into it, but having access to all of this stuff, which is still, just to look at it on face value, looks really cool and really interesting, and it's functional and it has good transference if used correctly to performance, keeps people interested.
Yeah, I think that's...
and satiates that sort of motivation we were talking about before.
I think that's probably more a bigger part of it than people would give it credit for, that if all you've got are, hammer strength machines, cable machines, dumbbells, and some pretty crappy barbells, then you're probably going to end up using a Smith machine anyway, that can get real boring real quickly.
Yeah.
And having varied equipment, at least, it makes it a little bit easier to stay engaged.
A lot of people too are with that sort of stuff, with that machine environment and the commercial gym environment, it's you against yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in community, was one you just briefly touched on, I think is massive, because when you're in a community, you're bouncing off other people are doing similar things. You're, if not competing, you might be doing a WOD for at a CrossFit box.
Yeah, you're essentially racing.
You're racing. So people have come out of team sport. That is very attractive.
Yeah.
For me, I love that. I think that's awesome.
Oh yeah, because it adds that mixture of pride and shame to the equation. And people I don't want to look like a bag of shit in front of these people who I hang out with at the gym.
I think you're both nailing this on the head. When you look at the machines that we've been discussing, the classic machines that were sort of the stock and standard for commercial gyms, the bodybuilding world, these guys and girls work super, super hard, and they're
intrinsically driven.
They are.
Level of discipline is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's through the roof.
It's hours a day, every day. Not
just in the gym. It's what they do outside of the gym in terms of their nutrition, their hydration, their recovery, their sleep.
Vitamin S.
Well, depends on the federation, but that's arguable as well. Yeah. But they're super, super dedicated to their craft, and what people see in terms of on the stage, that's the end product. The process is very sort of dry and repetitive. And exactly why we're seeing success in these.
So it sort of narrows the long-term appeal to a very select group of people.
Exactly what you were saying.
And people are saying now you can get 80 to 90% of the way to the way these people look by doing a mix of strength training, high intensity training, whatever you can jumble it all up and get most of the way there in terms of that aesthetic look.
Yeah, you can get lean, and you can bring out the best of your genetics strong, in many other ways.
You can get a lot of the results by doing fun things.
Turn the gym into a buffet. Whereas, if you don't like the seafood, you don't have to eat it. Correct. There's other stuff. If all you want to do is dumbbells, barbells, and machines, there's a place for you to go and do that.
To the point where sometimes if we're using seafood as an analogy for cable and hammer strength, to the point where there is no seafood in that buffet at all, whether you want it or not. So many gyms
you might have a shellfish allergy.
For an allergy to Atlas stones and yolks.
Correct.
Cool. So we've hit our time limit. Is there anything else you want to chuck in there before we wrap up?
No, I think, just on that equipment thing, I think, how everything, it is cyclical. So at the moment, people are...
That's like you were saying before, there's a fashion aspect to it.
Yeah, there is. And I think the calisthenics thing is especially with COVID, is sort of going to start to, like, you'll see people are realizing that they can do body weight work. They can do, so it's going to add more strings to the.
You think prison training regimes are going to come back into
like high
popularity?
volume body weight training, like there's a place for that, and gyms will accommodate, like we can accommodate that here with the rigs and the some of the gear. Like there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of there'll be a lot of options there. Yeah, it's funny too now because the training, like I was reading about this a while ago. Physical training used to be like PT or that sort of thing. Used to be keeping your body mobile and fresh so you could do the things that you needed to do. So there would be star jumps, it'd be toe touches, it'd be like just hip bends, it'd be all sorts of just stuff just to keep the body moving so that you could then go and work all day. Whereas now, because we don't work and we just sit, it's evolving and becoming, so some of that sort of stuff is coming back into people's training regimes as well, actually just mobilizing themselves. And does that make sense?
Yeah,
that's
good point.
Rambling shit.
Good point. And it'd be remiss of us not to say,
the more sedentary we get, the more that stuff will be important.
Yeah, and also, like anything, you can have all the gear and no idea, can't you? But
yeah, and I think that's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the rule more than the exception. People buy it because it's cool.
Yeah.
Because it might bring some more people into the gym. If you're the only person in a 10 block radius that's got a reverse hyper and battle ropes, that's something people are who want that, they have to come to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as you've got more and more varied equipment, as a coach, you've got to be across more and more and more of it, and you have to understand the value and the use cases of that equipment the same way you do with a dumbbell or a cable machine. And I sort of worry that there's going to be sort of an averaging of skill because there's more to learn. They're gonna and roughly the same amount of time available to learn that sort of stuff, you're going to end up being less competent across the board, potentially.
Definitely that potential there for that. But you want to, for those people sort of looking to utilise this equipment, it's a good idea to seek out a coach or coaches or a training partner that knows where and when to put it into a training regime and why. And understand,
they need to be able to justify it.
Understand the why behind it. If you're not interested in the why, just make sure you're technically proficient with the movements and the equipment before you use it.
I really want to push back on the technically proficient thing, but it's going to add another hour to this that we don't have. I agree with you.
In principle.
Push.
I do. I just think it's going to... No, well...
All right, go for it. I got half an hour.
It raises the... how do you know what technically... Right, and so this is... Correct. It's like a whole bag of cats.
There's a lot of assumptions there with what I said, but it's hard to sort of... Because, we can't very well go, okay, well, let's start... We could, but we don't have time now. Let's start with a reverse hyper.
Yeah.
Let's then go to GHD. Let's then go to the ropes. Let's then go to the yoke. Let's then go to the farmer's walk, dead balls, wall balls, so on, kettlebells, so on and so on. We would have to go through every single piece. But generally speaking, if you can seek out people that know how to use the equipment and why, you're going to be closer to having good technique than having bad technique.
Yeah, pick someone that can give you a credible explanation over someone that looks good training.
I like that.
Yep. But if you get two together,
use a hammer strength
fine.
Machine.
What's that?
Failing that, use a hammer strength.
Yeah, if you're not sure,
Cables,
that's why those machines exist.
And they're still in gyms now because they work.
Yeah, there's cable machines here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, we're going to cut this off, otherwise we're going to get back into equipment again. All good?
Yep.
Cheers.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.